London.
So I thought, you know what, this is actually a really interesting topic because...
I think she's amazing. She really
One story that really caught my attention this week.
My story relates to a particular TV
It's going to take away a lot of jobs.
Week in Review.
Oh yes, been having a lot of fun discussing some stories here in the studio with my guests for Week in Review. I'm joined with two fantastic Londoners talking about the stories that matter to them. Rachel Krieger, a comedian, writer, podcaster, live in the studio. You can get more details on the podcast. It's called Jew Talking to Me, and also you can find her on social media, Rach Krieger. The website is rachelkrieger.com. Alongside James Erskine, who is the founder of Rocket and also a technology expert here on the show. You can get more details for James on X. It's James Erskine. That's Erskine for more details. Thanks for staying with me, guys.
Don't be silly.
Great chat. So let's delve straight into the next story. Struck by this one, actually, James. It's one of yours, and this is from the BBC website, so people can go straight there. I'm just going to read the top line. Recovering addict has used her experience for a podcast, and it's been listened to 12 million times in 3 months. Give us more details.
So there are now over 4 million active podcasts out there in the world. It seems like everybody has a podcast.
Everyone's a podcaster.
I got two. I'm so sorry.
Yes, you have, actually.
I have a podcast as well, actually. So yeah, it must be catching. So, but it's now dominated by big players. So when you find a podcast that's really useful and really personal and really, in the nicest possible way, amateurly produced, then I think that's a really good thing.
Really? Because I would have thought people want it polished and tight, but you're saying...
they want it real.
Okay.
I think, this one is called Class A People, and it's created by somebody called Hannah Amelia. And what she did was she created a podcast for recovering addicts. And Hannah Amelia Viney, she's from Oxfordshire, she started a TikTok channel and she started discussing her addiction. And she grew to a community of about 12,000. And she thought, how can I go more long form than this? So on her podcast series, she started it in July and she hit that milestone number more recently. But she started this podcast and she interviews other addicts going through recovery. And I've said on the show before, I'm in recovery myself. I went to rehab last summer. I'm now nearly 15 months clean and serene.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So, and it feels part of my daily life. But the thing that I've noticed, one, I've become something of a convert to a 12-step program, and I never thought I'd be a grade A student, but I kind of am. I go to meetings, all of that. The other thing that's really important is community. And having conversations with people that are going through the same stuff that you are is really important. And that's where this podcast is amazing, because it's raw, it's honest, it talks about the faults, it has elements of euphoric recall. They talk about the silly times, they talk about the times where things went too far, and they also talk about the emotional trauma underpinning addiction. And the reason why I think Hannah Viney's a genius is because she hasn't gone to interview celebrities. She hasn't gone to interview anybody other than real people. And she regularly asks for stories from the listeners, sometimes quite long form stories. So 10, 12-minute written pieces from listeners that are going through addiction. And the reason why I think it really works is because it's real and it's authentic. And yeah, she reached this milestone. She's now got a load of listeners. 1 in 40 people in the UK use cocaine. It's more prevalent in London. It's a real problem, and you just never know who's struggling. And I think things like this can really help.
Before I bring you in, Rachel, I'd like to, if I can, pick up on a couple of points, James. Firstly, thank you for being so open and honest. I know you have been many times that you're here, so I really do respect you and appreciate that. Interesting, though, that you said it's more prevalent in London. You're a recovering addict. You're a Londoner.
Yeah.
Elaborate on what you mean.
I work in advertising. It's one of the articles, and I'll put it on my social media afterwards, that I linked to as kind of part of this subject, was about how I think now the next generation, Gen Z, are less fueled by alcohol and drugs. But my generation, Generation X, there was a real moment of if you weren't achieving and weren't lasting all hours of the whole day, then you were doing something wrong. And that meant making no compromises. Now, people take value in a good night's sleep. Now, any health professional will tell you a good night's sleep is the most important thing. I would get up early, I would work, I'd have a long lunch, I'd then go back to the office, I'd then go out most nights in my 20s and 30s. It's not conducive to a healthy lifestyle. And without that healthy lifestyle, people need some kind of fuel to get through it. And whether that's fuel to hide from emotions they're really feeling or literally fuel to stop them falling asleep, people are always looking for it. And you notice it. I mean, particularly in recovery, you notice it on football stands. You notice it I went to see the boxing at Wembley Stadium. You notice people doing it there. It's so prevalent and it's so noticeable. Now, I'm not on my moral high horse about it. I don't mind. People can do what they want to do. But I also am painfully aware that you don't know what is going on behind anybody's habit. I would always say previously I had a habit and it changed into an addiction. I no longer think that's true. One thing I've learned in recovery is the way that I reacted the first time that I did it was problematic, and that was a warning sign. And the fact I used it to escape how I was feeling is really important and really and it is more prevalent in London because there's more nights out, there are more pubs, there are more bars, and everybody's expected to go at a slightly higher pace and speed than they perhaps would normally go.
Let me bring you in on this, Rachel.
Right.
You're a comedian. You're part of the, the night economy, the gig economy. I suspect a lot of what James is talking about, you may well have seen. What's your thoughts?
I think in my industry, alcohol is the biggest issue for people. And I see a lot of people who routinely will only go on stage once they've got a drink in their hand, whatever that might be. It becomes part of their persona. And I think I'm quite an addictive person. Like if I get into something, I don't have like half measures. So I made a conscious choice to never drink when I'm working. I'm not an excessive drinker anyway.
Sure.
I do drink, but I don't drink to excess. But I think that's because I feel like it's quite an easy slippery slope if most of your workplace is an alcohol-based environment. And I can see how easy it becomes a thing you do always before you get on stage, or always when you come off stage, or so many comedians come on and when they go, hi, how are you? Who's drinking? Who's drinking is a really common beginning. Then everybody cheers. And I think that's kind of fascinating. But in terms of, James, what you were saying, something that really interested me was before I moved into the entertainment industry, I worked in social care.
Okay.
I trained as a therapist, and then I specialised at one point in substance misuse. And I worked for a substance misuse, that's what it was called then, organisation working with younger people. So it was mainly 16 to 24, but I also worked in schools.
Okay.
And the idea about ordinary people's stories are so important because everyone has their story and everyone has their reason and their triggers and their background. And the idea of hearing those stories I think is very powerful. But for younger people now, I think they don't take notice of anything that doesn't come from a celebrity. So I can see why for maybe our generation that sort of podcast is incredibly powerful, but for let's say my son's at uni, but his peers, I think often it would have to be coming from like someone they really look up to, saying
Sure.
actually this was my experience, before they would really take it seriously, even if they had a lot of respect for whoever was telling them their story.
If you'd like to weigh in on this, 0800 731 2000 is the number. I feel like we could talk about this particular story for a long time to come, but time is limited and I want to get some more stories in if possible. Let's go straight to your next one then, shall we, Rachel? This is taken from the Metro. Julian Clary saying, I've nearly been killed 3 times on stage. Tell us more. What did you want to say about this?
Okay, so this was just an article that Julian Clary wrote. He's got a book that's come out about his life, and since his career began in the 80s, he talks about how he's had 3 occasions where he's nearly been killed on stage by glitter balls coming loose, because obviously Julian's famous for his glittery personality and stage clothes and set and dramatic background, and on 3 different occasions a glitter ball has nearly come loose, or has come loose, and nearly maimed someone, at one point injuring someone in the audience. And what that made me think of is I had an incident once on stage where I'd finished my set, people were clapping, and then it was like being in a sitcom where I tripped over a wire, I knocked into the table that had my water on it, the water went to the floor, I bent down to pick up the water, the mic stand went over, the mic plummeted down, the sound guy had his hands on his ears, obviously got a very loud noise, and then I sort of limped off the stage, and it sort of had ruined the whole show. And I was also once, I went to see Tim Minchin live at the Greenwich Comedy Festival, and one of the lights, it was in a huge tent, I think, massive huge room, and one of the lights from the ceiling swung down, like the chandelier in Phantom of the Opera, nearly missed everyone. And there's so many dramas, and I thought, it's interesting, obviously if someone gets seriously injured, these are not funny stories. But I was thinking back to how many people I remembered who's had like incidents like that on stage, and I did a bit of online searching, and the famous ones that I could find that I remembered were Madonna's cape, someone catching her cape and she fell down the stairs at the Brit Awards, 2015. Beyonce, her hair got caught in a big fan when she was performing in Montreal, she just styled it out. She just carried on, didn't pause for breath. Lenny Kravitz, he put his leg up on a speaker while he was playing guitar as he came down to bend near the front of the stage and split his trousers, which is not really an accident but quite entertaining. Jade from Little Mix, they were doing they were suspended from the ceiling and something went a bit wrong, or she made an awkward movement and she flipped upside down. Quite hard to sing upside down. And then there's a funny clip somewhere of Bret Michaels from the band Poison, who many people have said I look like, circa the 80s, that he stayed on stage just for an extra few minutes as the band was coming off to sort of make eye contact with, just a bit of a glory moment. But there's a big set piece in the end of that show and things come down from above, and as he turns, he hit his head on a bit of the set as it was coming down, and he did hurt himself. But I did feel like him. If you're going to linger there beyond the rest of your band for the attention, but these things happen. So I think the idea of Julian Clary being taken out by a glitter ball is how would you want to go
in a way? What are your thoughts?
I think I think you're right, everybody remembers them on the stage, but I think what people also will always remember is when it happens in their own life. Of course, as I remember, I can tell you the corner in Clerkenwell EC1
Go on.
where I was walking, I was reading a text message, not looking where I was going, and I was probably late 30s. I fell down some steps, and I was so humiliating, and I didn't fall over whereby you do one of those trips and try and pretend you meant to walk like it. I properly fell over, and it was an elderly lady that came up to me to say, "Are you all right?" It was that much of a fall, and everybody will have that once in their life, and everybody will and they will have probably tried to have blocked it out of their memory, but those times when you fall over in real life are awful. And when it happens to a celebrity, I suppose it's amplified by 1,000 because lots of people have seen it.
And also it means they're human.
Yes, very true. Very true.
The amount of times I have tripped up and fallen flat on my face here in London, I think people could probably identify me by the back of my head because I'm, quite literally that. And you're right, but when it happens to a celeb, it's like, they've been brought back right down to reality. Right. And they're human like the rest of us.
Yes, completely.
Which there is some glory in that, I have to say. Stay with us. I'm going to continue having a chat with my guests. If you've got a story to share, I'd love to hear it. 81333, start the message of London.